Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and today we're visiting with Charles W. Sasser, author of the newly released book from our good friends at WND Books, Crushing the Collective, The Last Chance to Keep America Free and Self-Governing. Chuck Sasser, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you, Rev. Privileged to be here.
Well, it's an honor.
Privileged to be anywhere.
Thank you. It's an honor for us. Charles Sasser is a historian, journalist, photographer, and author of more than 60 books, more than 3,000 articles appearing in publications from parents and guideposts to Soldier of Fortune and World War II history. A 29-year veteran, he served 13 of those as a Green Beret. A former police officer, he's taught history, creative writing, and criminal justice for nearly 40 years. He was the director of criminal justice at American Christian College, and he lives outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. For some reason I want to call you Dr. Sasser because I just think your credentials are so overwhelmingly stunning, both from an academic and a practical aspect, that you just seem to be scholarly and quite an extraordinary, accomplished man who served his country faithfully, served his community faithfully, and you have insights into what's going on in America. And I'd like to have you kind of introduce us to Crushing the Collective and kind of walk us through some of the foundational principles that you're presenting in this stunning revelation about not only the condition of America, but how this is our last chance to keep America free and self-governing, and not just a diatribe about how wretched things are, but what we can do about it as a nation.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend. What I'd like to let me start with this a little bit here. If anybody's going to read this book, maybe they better start right away, because the world is ending Saturday.
That's right.
I mean, have we heard that?
We have heard that the end of the world is coming. It's not biblical, of course. There is no end of the world. And, you know, it made me do a word study on the word moron. And I couldn't figure out why it was not the word less on. Because a moron means you have more on. I think that these people who are date setters, even Jesus didn't know the day of his return. So how do these people know above what God knows? It's stunning to me.
Well, he must have been a progressive, Rev, because they are so much brighter than the rest of us. I mean, they're privileged. They're unique. They know everything. And we poor hillbillies, I'm just no hillbilly from the Ozarks. I mean, I can't possibly be as smart as Nancy Pelosi or Maxine Waters. I can't possibly be that, or Hillary. I mean, Hillary, the smartest woman in the world. And I can't possibly be as smart as these people.
No,
so sure they know.
It is amazing that, and what's interesting is we did an appeal on this show and said, if you believe that the end of the world is Saturday, send whatever funds you have here to Igniting a Nation Ministries, so that if we're left here, which we expect that we would be, that we can continue to minister to those poor, uneducated souls who are left behind. And we wish you good luck in your new location.
Well, yeah, well, you know, the thing is, minorities and women are going to be the hardest hit. We know that, don't we?
Well, of course, because they're the hardest hit in every situation, because God is a racial profiler. God must be a racist, because look at what he invented. He invented cotton and bananas and the things that have become the stumbling blocks of humanity in America today that we focus on. But how did we get here?
Well, I think it goes back to one thing. I always like the book itself, and in my insight and research into this, I think it goes back to a Scottish professor named Alexander Tytler, or Tyler. He's referenced both ways, but I think it's Tytler. And, you know, with his tyranny-liberty cycle, and I'm sure you've heard of that, you know, that every society, I'm a historian, and, you know, kind of an amateur archaeologist. I mean, these are some of my interests. And, of course, I teach history. Part-time. I'm really a journalist. But anyway, it starts by Alexander Tytler, and he said that every society, every empire lasts about 200 years. And each one of them has gone through the same cycle, from bondage through the cycle back to bondage again. That includes, Rome, Persia, Mesopotamia, also includes Hitler's Germany, the Soviet Union. They've all gone, and we're going through that same cycle now. Let me go through real quick. I'll just go real quick through this. We go from, he said, bondage. We go from there to courage, to spiritual faith, to liberty, to abundance. And stop me when something sounds familiar. Abundance, complacency, apathy, dependency, and then we're back to bondage. The next step is back to bondage. And we've got 47% people now live off the largesse of the rest of us. That's dependency. And so he's right. We're right on the next step. And if we look at the insanity, we were discussing that previously, the insanity, the absolute insanity, there's no common sense left in this world. And we got all these people who are constantly attacking out of our institutions. They're not coming from outside the institutions, they're attacking from within the institutions because they control the institutions. And that goes back at least to Russia in 1917, the Russian Revolution, when a couple of characters named Gramsci and what was the other guy's name? Lukács and Gramsci started the Frankfurt School. Now, the Frankfurt School should be very important. We should really view that as very important, but you don't hear much about it because why? We have so many diversions that the progressives put in the way here that we don't know history anymore. And but this Frankfurt School was started by communists. Another thing we must understand, that Marx was not just the father of communism. Marx was also the father of fascism. They are virtually identical. They are virtually identical and they all end in the same place. What we're seeing now in this country is a version of socialism. We call it Marxism. It's Marxism, yes. But whether it's communism or fascism, it's still Marxism. We've got Marxism as philosophy. We've got fascism as an activity, as a method by which we intend to take over. The progressives intend to actually take over this country and make it socialist. And this Frankfurt School, it said one of the things they first said in they moved to the U.S., moved to London. Pardon me. When they had the international warfare between the communists and the fascists, they had that little, when Stalin was kind of joining the Allies, and they had that little international warfare. They kicked out the Frankfurt School. It went to London. And it moved to Columbia University then in New York City. And it's been influenced on our education ever since. And one of the tenets of this was that the United States would never be taken over by force, and it would never be taken over from outside, peaceful methods. What happened is what they call a long march through the institutions. In other words, what they intended to do was take over all the institutions one by one, either take them over or destroy them. And one of the first things they want to destroy is the family. Look at Stalin. He destroyed with his abortion policies, with his putting women, make sure they went on the labor force. That was one of the first things he did, was take over family, destroy the family. And another thing that is mentioned is that also we have to destroy sexual mores, because you corrupt people, that makes them so much easier to control, because they're going to do what you tell them to do because they're busy with everything else. So that's what they've done. Is since then there was a guy named Herbert Marcuse in the 1960s, was a professor at the University of California, at San Diego, and at Berkeley at different times. Does that surprise you that he might be at Berkeley?
Not at all.
Well, he was essentially at first a communist, and then he became a fascist, the same way as the two men who started the Frankfurt School. They were first Marxist, and then they were fascist, and then they were Marxist again, because you can see this interchangeability. Oh yeah, and that metamorphed into progressivism eventually, and we can see progressivism now. So anything, They said we must have a long march through the institutions. And not only that, is that we must be tolerant. Where do we hear this word constantly? We must be tolerant of the left, but we must be intolerant of the right and shut them up. We must, oppose our enemies, and that's us. We must oppose them, and while we march through the institutions. Well, now look what's happened. We develop this insanity, and we say this is insanity. No, it's not really. I call it going bonkers, but it's not really insanity. Now, I don't believe in I was a homicide detective, so I've seen conspiracies. But I don't believe this is a conspiracy as such. I believe it's a design. And the design is to work through our cultures and take them over and use them to destroy the Constitution of the United States, to destroy America. Well, look what even the founders. Dallas last week, they're considering moving Ben Franklin's name from the schools in Dallas. Pretty sure you heard that. Now, why? Why would they do that? Well, he supposedly, 2 generations before the Civil War, he supposedly had some connection with the Confederacy. So they're removing his name. Jefferson's name, they want to remove that. And it goes on and on. I always had a quote, and I copied that down somewhere. And I always I want people we've got to understand what's happening today. We've got to understand what George Orwell was talking about, I think, in 1984. And he says, at that time, and we're doing this exact thing now, the Antifa. These people are fascists, of course. And they're fighting the fascists, but it's a diversion. And George Orwell wrote 1984, this is what published in 1947. He says, every record has been destroyed or falsified. Our history has been falsified. Everything from Columbus on down, on up has been falsified so that we don't see it. And it has to fit the politically correct record, or we put it down Orwell's memory hole.
Charles,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
When we look at this condition in America today, we're looking at a nation, a republic that was founded on majority rule. But the majority who voted in the 2016 presidential election to put in a conservative president, maybe a moderately conservative president, but not a classic conservative president, spoke up. But then they went radio silent. The day after the election, they went back in their holes and they stopped speaking. And it's as if the right has lost their voice. The left has risen up to the point where it is every day it's something new, from cotton at Hobby Lobby to transgender to LGBTQ plus, and I don't even know what the pluses are. I've run out of letters to explain. We now have same-sex marriage. The next step will be polygamy, which will make the fundamental Mormons happy and will make the Muslims happy that they can bring that aspect of Sharia to America. When I look at this idea of Islam being submission, a whole ideology of submission, I see many of the ideologies of the left falling into a category of submission, removing the identity of the individual, even though they claim the individual is the only thing that matters, but they're looking to standardize individuality, and this is what Hitler did when he stripped us of our clothing. He made us all less than human, and his error was that he tattooed us, which was a unique mark, and that was some of the things that kept people alive, was realizing that they were uniquely marked. And so his craziness and his attention to detail wound up being a little bit of his counterproductive undoing, in the fact that he wanted to keep such complete records that he made people unique at Auschwitz and Birkenau. When we look at this, why has the right gone so suddenly silent that we've allowed ourselves to be overrun by this? And is this by design? Is there something larger at work here? Is America, can we crush what you call the collective, which I'd like you to define for our audience what the collective is, and can we undo all this, or is this a path that every empire, every nation has gone down? And ultimately, because it is predictable and cyclical, that this is going to happen to America?
I think it's predictable. And I think when we've reached this level, and why are we silent? Let's listen, why are we silent? It primarily, now look, if the cotton bed, the bananas, there's anything can be trivial, no matter what it is, but that makes you a racist, or it makes you a homophobe, or a sexist, and people just kind of cower back rather than being attacked. I mean, we have the human nature. We don't want to be attacked all the time. So therefore, we keep our mouths shut. And Cheryl Atkinson wrote a great book on this, in which she said, you know, we're like now 46 in the world when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of the press, somewhere around Albania or somewhere. And the reason for that, she says, and I think she's right, is political correctness and self-censorship. We won't, hey, you know, I'm a writer. I've published thousands of magazine articles, 60 books. Now, I'm seeing in our press now, I'm talking in our publishers, I'm seeing this political correctness infiltrating them, so that you know, they want to correct anything that might possibly be offensive. You said that, and if you don't go along, if you talk about race, or you talk about sex, or you talk about homosexuality, you talk about any of these could be controversial subjects, then you're censored out, or you're belittled, intimidated. And so therefore we self-censor ourselves, and we don't write. Our journalists have become cowards. They don't write. People don't speak out. Say, look, this is common sense. We got 50 genders now, other than male and female. I said, what? But we're not supposed to notice this. We're not supposed to, you know, say, man, this is bonkers. We're not supposed to notice that at all. We're supposed to accept it and go along with it. We're supposed to accept that Caitlyn Jenner can put on a dress and lipstick and grow his hair long and become a female. You know, we're supposed to accept that. Now, if I speak out against that, guess what, man? I'm a homophobe. That's not right to do that. And so, but all these things, all these protected areas that are protected by progressives, and why do they protect? How do they protect it? Through our institutions. They control the media. So the media just attacks the heck out of you. Every time you speak out against this thing, they're going to attack you. They only publish things that are progressive for the most part. I mean, they've got an agenda. Look at your entertainment. And it cracks me up. And our men, you know, that was one of the downfalls of Rome, and it's happening here. Our men become wussified. We're afraid to be real men anymore. Because look, it's a constant barrage on television, 100-pound women beating the heck out of 3 bruisers while the man kind of huddles in the corner. Or look at all your TV sitcoms. I don't watch TV, but I do read.
Right.
And the sitcoms. But what have you got? The most noble character on most of those are gay people. Or they're women. Or they're black people. But the white guy just kind of huddles back. The white man just huddles back because he's been vilified so much. I mean, it's just constant vilification.
Charles, when we look at the 7 spheres of influence, 6 of them are dominated by the progressives. And we're seeing the 7th one, which is church and family, being eroded. And there's a huge divide now between the progressive church that ordains gays and lesbians, forms same-sex marriage, does not take an absolute biblical pro-life stand. Education, fallen. Business, fallen. Government and safety, fallen. Health, fallen. Media and technology, fallen. Arts and sports, always been fallen. The last holdout is church, and that too is losing its way.
Oh, yes. Let's look at some of the insanity there in our churches now. There's a church that glorifies smoking marijuana. There's a church for homosexuals. There's a Bible now for homosexuals. There's a Bible for females in which God is now female. So we see this insanity even in our churches now. And as a result of that, what they say, 70% of all kids who may be raised in the church, as soon as they get to college, they go away from the church. Because they're taught that all the way through college. I mean, look, there's something evil about God, but there's something good about Islam. You don't criticize Islam. You don't criticize, Buddhism. You don't criticize, but it's always correct to criticize Christianity as being. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen any Catholics go out here or Jews go out here and cut people's heads off yet.
Right. The interesting part about this is we've taken anti-Semitism, which seems to be an acceptable practice. Okay.
Among the progressives.
Among the progressives, anti-Semitism, we're blamed for pretty much everything. I wish I ran the banks. I wish I ran the entertainment industry. If I had somebody else's money, I'd throw mine away. But the point of all this is that we have this stereotypical society that loves to go after names, labels, and it's almost counterintuitive that they stress the rights of the individual, but collectively they want to be dealt with as a group, that the sum of the parts is not greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And it's a bizarre scenario because it doesn't work anywhere else in any other aspect of the world, but it works in this particular environment. So when Bernie Sanders came out with a socialist agenda, and we called Bernie Sanders a socialist, we now elevated that word in our lexicon to a much higher status, and we began to discuss it. And yet there was no outcry. There was no, the McCarthyism of the 40s and 50s. There was no, listen, let's go find the communists. They're anti-American. Because if we did that, we would find the Muslims who supported Sharia, and they're anti-American. But we can't say that. Thank God for Joseph Farah, for WorldNet Daily, for WND Books, because they don't censor you, they don't censor me, and they bring the conservative, biblical worldview that doesn't allow us to be categorized anything else than we are an emulation of God on earth, speaking the very words of truth contained within the Scriptures. And that's who we are, and I'm proud of it, and I live for the Lord, and I'll die for the Lord, and I have to be willing to count the cost. We're talking with Charles W. Sasser, author of Crushing the Collective. We are looking at this absurd situation in America of this dynamic swing towards communism, towards socialism, towards a government that is not of the people, not by the people, and not for the people. It is government for the unification of a corporate or national ideology that every man, woman, and child must subscribe to. Your rights as an individual will be compromised. There will be no individual rights. There will only be universal rights, such as universal health care. Everybody treated the same under the same system. It has not worked in Canada. It has not worked in France. It has not worked in South America. It doesn't work in the former Soviet Union. It is an entitlement program that says that the government runs everything, and this is absolutely unconstitutional. It does not line up with what the Founding Fathers wrote, what they commented about after they wrote it in our Declaration of Independence and our Bill of Rights. Yet America is on this slope and on this path, and we must crush the collective. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to get back together with Charles W. Sasser talking about Crushing the Collective from WND Books and find out what we can do individually, community-wise, within our churches, within our homes, within our businesses, to help stop this move as America moves closer and closer to this progressive precipice. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Charles W. Sasser, author of Crushing the Collective, The Last Chance to Keep America Free and Self-Governing, from our good friends at WND Books. Chuck, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Red.
Chuck, we're having this conversation and we're taking a look at this transformation, fundamental transformation of culture and institutions, and how education was the way to get to the youth, which shaped the minds. I shared with you before we went on the air that I was a child of the 60s, in college the 60s and 70s, educational system, socialism, socialist aspects of things. We were the voice of the people. We took over the administration. Government was bad. Rules were bad. Laws were bad. It should be power to the people. And when I got to corporate America and I found out you couldn't make any money with power to the people, capitalism was the way to go, that everybody could rise to whatever their level of competence was. If they choose to excel, they could rise through the ranks, and I did so. And I became a corporate executive for both AT&T and Hewlett-Packard. And here I was, a long-haired, long-bearded, dope-smoking fool that rallied the people. And listen, people surrendered to the strongest spirit. So I was the strongest idiot spirit, so I became a spokesperson. You know, when I became in corporate America, I became the strong corporate. I drank the corporate Kool-Aid. Now I serve the Lord, and I'm just as zealous, like Paul was, just as zealous for the Lord as I was for the world. And so we look at this and we see that it is almost an invasion of the body snatchers, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We got the pod people. The pod people who have taken over, not our institution, but you see, I think Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Chucky, I think these guys are pod people. I don't think they own themselves anymore. I think they've been taken over by the idea of socialism. And that's what well, let's look. We've got almost half of the young Americans in America, half of the young Americans view socialism favorably. Look how Bernie Sanders could almost become our president. He honeymooned in Moscow during the Iron Curtain days. I mean, this guy, I never thought I'd ever see this. That I'd see the socialism rise like this. But people, once they become dependent, once they become cowardly, once they become morally uncertain about what they really believe, or they're criticized or stigmatized for believing it, all you have to do is walk into the White House and take it over, and we're almost to that point right now. I mean, look at Maxine Waters. Here she comes up last week and she calls Donald Trump that he's got KKK members in the White House. You realize how many people will believe that? That he's a white supremacist, that all these white supremacists are in the White House and they're attacking. That's all, none of it's true. It's all lies. And the pod people is speaking. So how do we retake it? How do we crush the collective? Newt Gingrich says, once the institutions, and I think Newt's pretty bright when it comes to history, and Newt says that once the institutions have been seized, that we're not going to be able to retake them again. And he also says, one or the other must ultimately win. Now, Dinesh D'Souza, he's kind of one of my heroes. Dinesh D'Souza, he gave one example of how we might win. He says, what we must do. No, he didn't say what we must do. He said this is one alternative in his book, The Big Lie. One alternative is to become as ruthless as the left has been ruthless in taking over our country for socialism. That we must fight and use the government as the government has been used against Christians, in Houston, seizing ministers' sermons because to see if they were anti-gay, IRS attacking, Christians, and it goes on and on and on, that use the government to attack. He says, well, what we must do when we have the power is to use the government against these people, because the only way, no, he didn't say, again, he did not say we must do this. He was giving this as an alternative. Because what he was talking about essentially is civil war.
Right.
And we may be coming to civil war, because sooner or later, even a gnat will bite back if you slap at it often enough. And so we've got our intimidated people, and we've all been intimidated. We've self-censored. And one of the reasons Rome fell again is that its men became effeminate. That they refused to fight. They wouldn't fight for the country. What happened? They imported foreigners who became the soldiers to fight for Rome. At the same time, women gained power over the white males at that time. They gained power over them, and they kind of just withdrew themselves. They became obsessed with homosexuality, with sexual perversions, with wealth, with the games, entertainment, they refused to be men. They refused to stand up for their country. They refused to stand up for what they believed in. The barbarians were imported to work that they wouldn't do anymore. Some of this sound familiar.
Why is it that the American progressive doesn't look at the models around the world of what the progressives got when they demanded that communism or socialism or these dictators, which is really what it's tantamount to, is you're not electing a president, you're electing a dictator, that women became subjugated in these environments. They were forced into forced labor into factories or sent to Siberia to work the pipelines, because if you took the woman out of the home, you subjugated the men in the home. Then they had nothing, so you had to look to the government. Then you look at the standardization of economic leveling, and everybody's treated the same way. So there's back to government cheese, back to government bread. There's a certain amount of managed income, managed resources. Then you get to managed health care. You know, in these countries with managed health care, socialized health care, you might wait 4 or 5 months for an operation you can get here in 3 or 4 days. And emergency services, you've got to be in a life-threatening situation, and because of socialized medicine, you're probably going to die if you're in a life-threatening situation. Because, why? Because incomes are managed. The government is now doing a single-payer system where they manage the entire thing. You know, you and I are on Medicare. We bought that insurance. We paid into that program from the time we were 13 or 14 years old, started paying taxes and paying Social Security and Medicare tax. We've been paying into that for 50 plus years, and that's an insurance policy. It is not an entitlement program. I paid for it, you paid for it. We collect a Social Security check. I paid for that. I bought a government annuity. I was charged for it. My employer matched the funds. It was a forced 401k program, and it's not government sponsored, it's government administered, but it's not their money. It's a fiduciary responsibility to the stakeholder, which is me and which is you. Why do they not see? They seem to be fairly well educated. They go to universities. They have the ability to read the same books you and I read, but they don't want to do anything but listen, which they're allowing people to feed them, control them, manage them, and they don't see. How can you not see that somebody is brainwashing you and feeding you a steady diet of half-truth, lie, and innuendo?
Well, I think the main thing there is goes back to education. You know, most universities rarely teach U.S. history now, and they've reformed it or conformed it to for along a progressive line. If you're a conservative, you're like 1% in the administration of any college, except for Hillsdale, of course. And but you're 1%, and you mustn't speak out then, or you're gone. But so you've got this constant indoctrination, this constant drumbeat. Hey, what happened to you? The long hair and the beard when you were young. You see, you bought into that until you became aware that this doesn't work. Until you look at history and you say every socialist society, no exception. Look at Venezuela right now. I mean, that's a disaster. It was one of the richest countries in South America. And it's a disaster now under socialism. And Trump, I loved it when he was speaking for the UN the other day. And he said it's not because they tried socialism or implemented socialism, it's because they implemented it well. And that's why, you know, look what happened to Venezuela. It happens again and again and again. But each time they say, no, it hadn't been tried properly. But if we control, if we who are bright, if we are the brightest woman in the world, if we are bright, we can do it the right way this time. And so it has to do with power. It has to do with ideology. This ideology of making heaven on earth. Heaven's not ever going to exist on earth.
No.
But you know what I think we must look at more than anything else right now is that Western civilization has been the stabilizing force throughout the world for several centuries. It has stabilized the world. So Western civilization has kept it stable without going completely, blowing up completely. But now we've lost. Look at what happened to Europe. Europe's gone. It's already gone past dependency. It's on its way to complete control by government, and it's gone. So we can't depend on that part of the Western civilization. It's Western. I ran an MP company for a while in Germany. This was 1991. I was activated for Desert Storm as an MP first sergeant. And after the war, we ran an MP, law and order mission in battles. And there were places then, I saw then in 1991, I wrote articles about it then. I said, this is going, this is gone. There were no-go places then because the Muslims were taking over all parts of cities. And I said, told my guys, you don't go in there with two guys in each truck, you don't go in there because it had gotten that bad now. Well, it's going to continue. It's the same thing is occurring now. Is that we've got barbarians at the gate? We're bringing in now. We're Islamizing our society, and we're not for the better. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. We're going to see exact same things happen in Europe, all these attacks and so forth. Not only that, look, we're changing names of everything. We're burying history. What we're doing, we're influencing all these people. We're influencing them towards socialism. We're burying names because they're racist. We're going to either figuratively or literally, we're going to begin burning books. In 1 year, we will be burning books, one way, figuratively or literally, because they are so offensive. Books like mine are offensive to the progressive. We will start burning books. There was a poet named Stein in Hitler's Germany, and then he wrote this phrase that I love. He says, "A society that will burn books will eventually burn people." And that's exactly what happens. And look at California. They have a law now. They haven't passed yet, but they're trying to pass it that will put you in jail, find you as a criminal for using the wrong pronoun of those 50 genders. This kind. I mean, you see this kind of insanity erupting everywhere. So why is it? What's happening? Education, indoctrination, propaganda. Hitler said, tell the biggest lie you can and the more you tell it, the more people will believe it. If bigger it is, the more people will believe the lie. But we've got big, big lies in this country. And
Chuck, when Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, these were people that we became and we associated with Islam and said, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wouldn't hurt a fly. These are Americanized people that bought into an ideology that, if they really would have thought about it, they probably would have become Jewish, but nobody was trying to proselytize them or trying to get them. We're not looking for converts. We're not out there soliciting because we actually don't want. We want people from the bloodline, and not that we discriminate, but it's just not something we've ever done as a people group throughout history, is go out and try to convert. And not our deal. But we've bought into this ideology and this imagery, and when we see how far the ideology of Islam has come, when we start elevating imams and we forget that around the world 90,000 Christians are killed on average every year at the hand of Muslims just because they're Christians in predominantly Muslim nations. This is coming here. What was it about 9/11? What was it about Orlando? What was it about San Bernardino that people do not understand, that the hard facts are there, that this will come full circle all the way back to the Islamization of America?
Two things. One thing, we divert our attention. Our attention is diverted by entertainment, the machines. We become a machine. I mean, you can't go any place without that. I just read that young people now have more hearing problems than older people. Because why? Machines in their ears all the time. And probably running into cars and traffic by speaking in their phones and so forth. So we're being diverted, constantly diverted by entertainment. Rome did the same thing with the games and so forth. And so we're being diverted from that. And and another thing I think is the problem that of just total. I was an undercover journalist on Occupy Wall Street. I went down and lived with these platoons. They didn't know who I was. All I do was talking to these people. Then they're from Harvard and Yale and University of Alabama. I gave this one character a free tuition for a semester, and then gave him this credit for occupying Wall Street, for example. But these guys they're ignorant. They had no idea what democracy was. They had no idea of history. They didn't know anything about history. One of these characters thought, for example, the Civil War occurred in 1940. These are Yale people, so they're not taught. They're propagandized. But we have gender studies and racial studies and women's studies. But where's history? History's almost not there anymore. Or economics. Who teaches the Constitution? Who did I hear the other day says we have got that if you're a parent or a grandparent, you've got to start teaching the kids the Constitution because they're not going to learn it in school because they're not taught that anymore.
That's so interesting because in law schools today, I've talked to several law professors, they don't teach the Constitution, they teach the United States Supreme Court decisions about the Constitution. So fundamentally, as far as arguing the case, they're studying precedent, they're not studying the actual text of the Constitution, which puts us in a greatly diminished capacity, and we become subjugated by those who are willing to read, study, look at history. But we see these futuristic movies where there are no libraries, there are no books, there's just information that's fed to you. And that's what the internet has become, is the steady stream of sound bites and steady stream of images. But Charles, I'm concerned you and I are becoming grumpy old men.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it looks like you and I are becoming grumpy old men.
We are grumpy old men. I'm proud of it, too. I'm going to start a society of grumpy old men.
You and I are the two guys sitting up in the balcony on the Muppet Show now. We're complaining about the youth of America. We're complaining about the socialists. We're complaining about the government. We're complaining. So we need to take this position of what can we do? If this is the ultimate end that's going to come, then what we have to do is we have to delay it as long as we can.
As long as we can. Speak out. That's the main thing. Do not be intimidated by these people. Speak out, no matter what, and it will cost us. I mean, I get threats to kill me. All kinds of threats because I speak out. And the next thing is we must start our own institutions. Hillsdale is a perfect example of this. I love Hillsdale. I do history seminars up there sometimes. Hillsdale College is the only college in the U.S. the only university in the U.S. that does not take federal funds. And as a result, it does teach. You get a full courses, no gender studies and all that. You get hard courses. You get, if you want to be an archaeologist, you get archaeology, history. You get the Constitution. They teach Constitution even over the internet. So anybody wants to take these courses. Yes, we start our institutions. We have to start. Wesleyan University in Oklahoma. My niece is now attending Wesleyan University, and I'm so proud of her because, oh my gosh, the president there, he's an arch conservative and he speaks out.
Is that Dr. Everett Piper?
No.
Where's Everett Piper? Because he just wrote a book called We Are Not a Daycare, where he told people that were offended by something, he said, we don't give you a degree in feelings. We give you a degree in education in the particular areas. So your feelings are irrelevant. We're not a daycare. We don't care if your feelings are hurt. We don't care if you're offended by this. We really don't care. We are not a daycare. We're an institute of higher learning. And if you don't like it here, then you may leave.
Yeah, and go to Berkeley.
Right.
Become part of the Antifa or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, he's the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University.
Is he? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Everett Piper. We had him on the program.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I admire him. And yes, they're doing what we all must do, is speak out and kind of reform our own institutions from inside. And that only includes media. We must make our own movies. There's been several Christian movies made in the last few years, and Dinesh D'Souza made some excellent movies, and now he's making one on I like this on how the progressives are really fascists. That their whole line comes from fascism as well, and that's from Marxism too. But he's making a movie on that now, And so that's speaking out. We're taking our institutions and we must reform the public trough. You know, I grew up in the mountains, so poor poverty was a step up. And my dad could neither read nor write. Mom could. We lived in a dirt floor chicken house, and at one time an old barn. I grew up in cotton fields, and one year we must have been hard up. But this is the best lesson I've ever learned about what we should do. And when I'm talking about reforming the public trough, my dad one year we didn't take anything from anybody. We were proud people. We took nothing from no one we didn't earn, and we ate possum and whatever we could catch too. And but one year we must have been hard up. My dad sent me to get gimpy groceries, which he called government surplus commodity. He called them gimpy groceries, but he was too proud to go. So he sent me down to the county barn, Simon A, and get cheese and all that. I was 12 years old, and I was a scrapper. I'm still a scrapper. At one point, I was a professional kickboxer. And, of course, I was in special forces. I was a cop. I've been a scrapper all my life. I was a scrapper then. 12 years old, I get there, and one of the men who worked there, the government workers, pushed me, and I'm ready to fight. Best lesson I've ever learned, and I think it's something we should all learn right now. He said, boy, and he doesn't even realize how prescient he was. He said, boy, if the government feeds you, it will do what it damn well pleases. That you feed a wild animal. You know, I'm an animal lover. Well, you know, I'm a hunter too, but you know, I've had all kinds of pets, everything from skunks and coyotes and everything else. My wife, I still bring them. I live on the range. I'm always bringing home wild pets, and some of them live in the house for a while. You know, matter of fact, Donna Sue wanted a back room built, so we built a back room, and the little room back there was for my pets. But if you feed these animals, guess what? You own these animals. People are animals, and to a larger degree, so you give them the public trough, which 47% of our people now are dependent upon government in one form or another. So you give them the trough, and they'll come running like pigs. Pigs we used to own, squealing and grunting and fighting, both feet in the trough and the slop. They're owned, and that's what's happening now. If you own people, you make them dependent. You make them victims. Guess what? And that's what progressives have been doing this whole time by infiltrating our institutions. They've been making them fair. So we have to start our own institutions. And one of the things is to reform the public trough. We have to reform the public trough. Look at Obama increased food stamps. I can't remember how much. But I see young people in their 20s, right, coming in there and buying beer, and so they can buy beer now because it was unfair that they couldn't buy beer with food stamps like everybody else bought beer. So I see young people in their 20s. And I said, my gosh, guys, I was in cotton fields when I was 8 years old, for Pete's sake. And you're 20-something and you can't find a job, give me a break. I'll go get you. Somebody asked me one time. I'm 75 years old. And I was talking to this guy, and I said, I'll bet you a week's wages. I'm still employed. I'm still paying Medicare and Social Security, and because I'm a journalist and I do all right. And I said, I'll bet you I can go out right now, I'm 75 years old, I'll have a job of doing something in 1 week, and you can't get a job? Give me a break. That's because the public trough is too easy. That slop has always been pulled.
Exactly
so we've got to reform that. That's
Charles, unfortunately, we are out of time. I could talk to you for hours and days because we're just so synced up and on the same page. We're talking with Charles W. Sasser, author of the new WND books release, Crushing the Collective, The Last Chance to Keep America Free and Self-Governing. You can visit our website, ignitinganation.com, and follow that link on the Books and Media page to get a copy for yourself. And you can go to the WND Superstore and pick up a copy of Crushing the Collective. Charles Sasser, great to meet you, my friend. You're my new best friend. I look forward to seeing you again and again right back here on Revealing the Truth. God bless you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.